We're going to talk today about having a mission in life. If you walk into work, whatever you do, even your family, your home, your love life, whatever it is, even if you're driving on the road at night alone, you need to always be aware of your mission. And that's part of spirituality. In spirituality, the mission, you know, is to uplift the entire human race. And despite the utter impossibility of that, the mission makes every day simpler and simpler as you travel on. You'll have great revelations, understandings, meetings with people, and you will be trashed every day of your life in some way. Sometimes they're very subtle, but those subtle ways are, you're aware that whatever this thing the devil is working through, it's insidious, it works through everything and everyone, and it's very subtle. Every human being has sub-personalities. They have a spiritual self, saying every human being that's spiritual. And the dividing line isn't very clear to anyone unless you have this condition called spiritual illumination, where you're not even present in the world. Then you'll know who's present and who's not spiritually. And there's a great depth of awareness and peace to that and understanding. And when you have that, you can assist any human being in the world, whether they're spiritual or not, through whatever is preventing them from moving forward at that moment in their life. When I say at that moment, it could be 200 years. So when you're very quiet, I just remember a dear friend of mine who passed, and well, it's too deep to go into, but the point is, a thing I mentioned was that I saw someone in 200 years changing. I said, well, I'll ever change, and of course, and time means nothing, and that person transcended through all that, and now they're here with me, and sometimes they give, even though she's a woman, Corinne, she gives a class now and then. There is no man or woman, this is infinite presence, being spiritual. And her mission was very deep and powerful and grounded in the world, very world-renowned, and in the arts. And the juxtaposition here is that the inverse of what appears to be is always spiritual, and you're living in that always spiritual zone if you are spiritual. And then all these crazy mystical words are common sense to you, because everything in the world without God is painful, tedious, tiring. There's an abruptness to it. There are always two sides to an issue, and there are no issues. There are no sides in this mystical apprehension of reality, which is the wise still call God, this wonderfulness that we all feel in the morning air, and the little golden haze on the grounds in the morning at first light. And for the spiritual, first light is always. You're never out of that soft glow, that kindness, that wonderfulness. It's like being in love with the dawn, is the same as, you know, holding a child's hand, that innocence where children haven't yet realized how deep and horrible this circumstance is. It's a trap. It's a bear trap for humans, this world. But everyone here is here voluntarily that's spiritual. The rest are part of something that is just lost and doesn't really exist. And as hard as that's to understand, there's a book by Martha Stout called The Sociopath Next Door. And there is a type of person that has no inclination to ever care or think about what you think or feel. And you'll never know who they are really, because she said it's 1 in 20 people, The Sociopath Next Door, the book. And they look at you like through a computer screen. And they're always amazed how easy it is to work with you and to elicit feelings from you that are human when they don't have them. And you think that you have a love relationship with someone like that. It's because your heart's so big, they give you the little word to say it's okay, and you think there's a relationship there. And then they'll bring you on and involve you at some point with something they'll do that's you're a little bit off in something, and they'll step in and do what will clean up your work for the day, even though it's a little bit perhaps not the right thing to do. And every sociopath or psychopath in the world will bring you into the fold that way. And this is a good way of looking at the whole world as being a sociopath. The whole presence of it, the whole energy of it is to entice you. And then you'll step in here, you help this way or that way, or feed the poor, or whatever. It's when Martha was washing Jesus' feet with some oil that was very expensive, some whatever, putting in and washing his feet, and then one of the disciples complained that's worth so much that we could give to the poor, and Jesus just said, the poor you will have with you always. In other words, this deep divine state of consciousness, where there's only God, this wonderfulness, is ours to behold all day, every day. And there are no side issues. And that's why in all the lives of the saints or the great seers, and we're familiar with from India and China and Japan and all, throughout the world actually, in every country, and they have these revered saints that are basically closed off from the whole world. Or sometime they'll step out and be known as a healer and so on. But the basic tenet of it and text of it is that they're step away from the world known, to God known, to God who is unconditioned, unknown to any of our senses. We relinquish our senses in prayer and meditation, reflection, contemplation, whatever you want to call it. And that's why we need a mission. And the mission should be spiritual. And then you can handle, you have a crazy buddy at work or a boss or a relationship, you just put up with it. I know my four sisters and I were very young. They were all very spiritual. And we joke with different. We had one aunt that was really a bad person, whatever, and we were aware of our spirituality, so we would handle the rudeness of the vibration by just being, in like making comical relief of it rather than taking it in, just handling it with a soft edge, like my buddy Carlos would do here. He's the toughest martial artist I know, including his teacher, because he's sitting here bored looking at me. But it's just kind, happy all day, and just lets it fluff off of you. And it's not because he's tough, but because he's kind and has a big spiritual heart. So if you have a mission and you know God is everything and you're going to lift the entirety, then it's not so bad dealing with your coworker, with a family member, with someone at the store or on the road. You can handle it. Every now and then, if someone will start something on the road, and I go like, for an instant, I go, no, just let it ride. And if you completely let it ride and you're utterly quiet, because I've been inside all my life, and yet when you're around the troops in your work life, things get grounded. So, and you have to unground yourself while you're grounded, and you unground yourself in the sense of your mission that you have. Mine is that no more pain should exist in the world by the time I'm gone. I have zero doubt of that being fulfilled. Zero, nothing. I know it will be fulfilled. And that's what allows me to put up with all the daily vendettas that are aimed at us as spiritual beings. Wherever we are, whatever we do, we're quiet. We're emotionally and psychologically uninvolved with the world around us. Now you can do that by being a Van Gogh or Van Gogh, whatever, and all the great painters, or if you're taking care of your children. My buddy here you're so completely present. But the basis of all this is getting back to this sense of being quiet on your own. The meditative poses all work, and I never really did them well because I've had some back injuries and neck early on. So when I'd go to India or I'd help teach different courses or whatever in different places around the world, I would just act like I wasn't in pain when I try to sit like that. But the point is, and this is important, so I don't do that. I just sit back in a lazy boy, and the body has nothing to do with the soul or the spirit. So they'll tell you get deep something thrombosis if you sit all day. Well, I've been doing it for 76 years, and I'm still in the same state I was born in. There's nothing, the world isn't here. It's not here. It never was. It never will be. So when you just sit quietly, these things come to you. There is a God. God is actually God. You know how wonderful that is? So you'll have this presence, infinite kindness and purity and intelligence and decency, and he actually is God. It's infinite spirit, and they're just realms and dimensions of absolute is a word, glory. I don't know what to call it. It's infinite happiness and ecstasy, and this one stupid particle of dust in as far as the vibration of it, to me, as being a spiritual person. Everyone in the world in this room here has had these experiences throughout their life at different times. And then at this moment you see it's the whole innocuousness of the whole world. It really doesn't count. It isn't that important. It doesn't matter about the socio-political atmosphere if you can sit back in your easy chair, and you'll know that at some point that the most important thing you'll ever have to do is to learn to sit quietly in your chair at night, during the day, whenever. And then everything else is free. So the sense of mission, if you're spiritual, is illumination. You're illuminated for everyone else. It's never for you. Does that make sense? So from the moment you feel God and feel that glory of it, the wonder of it, the mystical apprehension of reality is so tender and kind and pure, and again actually is God, so you know that's real, then it's easy to walk through the day-to-day and drudgery and silliness and absurdity of it. And not that whatever decent folk do in their day-to-day mission isn't helpful, but in spiritual consciousness you're moving towards this oneness with the divine. Imagine such a thing. And some people, well, you can't think you're one with God. Well, as a spiritual person, talk to any of the spiritual people in your life. Yeah, it's God is forcing that on you. I'm very humbled, to be honest, for this. Every spiritual person feels that way. And God is forcing on godness to you, and you're fighting it all day. I'm just nothing. But that nothing is it's like a little dry leaf moving in a summer wind. It's okay. To be nothing is the most wondrous beginning of being a human being. Then you see through it all, and then you have this higher mission. You can help your children, your friends, your loved ones, and basically you're on the way to lift the whole world. And the whole world isn't like 2,000 people there, or that place there, or this country here. It's a vibration, because once you're into the spiritual realm, the places on the map do not exist. There's only this godness. This easy, very generous wonder about life. And so your whole sense of reality will be very gentle, dignified, very sober, kind and true. And you'll be able to see exactly who and what everyone might believe themselves to be, and you can offer just invisibly, through your thought, whatever is needed for that person, that day, that time, that minute, that institution, that business, that family. You'll always see how to lift it a little further. And the drudgery, if you're just combating your brothers or sisters, that goes away when you know not to react to it. Because if you react to it, it causes the other families to react to it. If you don't react to it, then you can talk the next one around you into this sense of a mission. I hope that makes sense. Because when you have this sense of God in a very spiritual sense, the mission is the same for every spiritual person who ever lived. You can read their writings. Best thing is to talk to someone that's spiritual in your life. Ask them and listen. Like my buddy here is the only person that I know that actually listens to people. It kind of shocked me yesterday. The point is, if you're quiet and spiritual, you can ask people, let them live their life. Everyone's cogitating it, they're worried about it all day. And just be there for a friend or lover or someone near you or a child. Just listen. I told about before working with some people that help. We had great techniques for helping people. With children, we called it reenactment therapy. If you ask a child, they just fell and hit their knee real hard. Oh, what happened? You just very quietly, without thinking, just, what happened? Oh, then show me that. And they have them do it 1 or 2 or 3 times, and by the second time, they're just running around again, they forget it. And with older people, if you, oh, what happened? And you can't have a thought about it, so they won't react. I did this with veterans that had serious things. So if you're very quiet and listen to it without ever judging, without ever thinking anything, it's like being in that quiet state of your mission, just, then what happened? And they say something, you acknowledge, oh, thank you for telling me. And with the same intent they have, if they feel healed, and they go, oh, thank you. And you never bring it up again. That's called, anyway, there's another word for that. Point is to listen to people around you, be there for you, because if you're on this mission for God, we almost don't have the right to have our own thoughts and feelings. We're around people who need a little upliftment. And that's the work we do. So my buddy Carlos or my buddy here, we have the ability to listen. It's an extraordinary gift. It's necessary. And that's one of the many ways that we step forward into the fray. And if the whole world's your mission, I know I myself can walk into just about any circumstance, to be honest, and take part, and because you'll have a sense of what the mission is. You know, a family, you know, you'll feel the feeling, the sense of that family together, and you can walk right in, as long as you're nobody. You're never intruding, you're never making a stance. You're there to be part of that atmosphere. And then to that atmosphere you add this golden light that we call God, that God calls you. There's a real you, an eternal you, a permanent you. And when you're there, God himself is looking out from your eyes. It's quite wonderful and human and mystical, and evokes a sense of endearment towards God, and that these words fail to elicit. It's just, there is a God, we're gods. We're here in a holy land. And the mission is to not react to the inanity of the circumstances or people around us, and step through, keep looking for the ones that have a little glow about them, and bring them into the fold, and the next, and the next. And that's the way this thing's going to end. We're going to fold it up like an old moth-beaten blanket, moth-bitten blanket. The whole world, it's an illusion. All the mystical traditions of the world, all the spiritual traditions have talked about that. And if you read the Bible right, you'll see that, as Carl Jung said, even God seeks his own. We are as gods. We're not lost. We don't need. We're not seekers. So when we sit quietly, we'll be filled day and night with what we need to know, with what we need to see. Some days it'll be very crazy, and then we'll pick up Martha Stout's book or whatever, or read the Revelation, and you'll see there's something astir. There's war afoot, and you will understand all the little idiosyncrasies of the dark side and how they're working on you all day, every day, and you'll be able to step through. We have family members in great travail. I know a young saintly lady that's part of eternity, and I can't even tell her family that's, you know, like my friend that passed, my great genius that does some of these classes for me. Well, I seem to be here doing it. There are no time barriers. We think about our lovers during our life. Certainly we might have been fallen in love when we're 17 or 22, it doesn't matter. Or you don't think about it with lust or need, it's just you appreciate the heartfelt, like God touches us at different points to let us breathe. I knew when I was very young, I didn't know how lonely I was because I only thought about God 24 hours a day, and every now and then I meet someone very dear and I would be very touched, didn't realize how lonely I was, because when you have this divine apprehension, you're aware of God all day, every day, and you know the world is a lost condition, then you can do without anything. That's why the yogis on their mission, I met yogis that don't eat and so forth in India and so forth. And or I talked about the ones in Tibet where they'd put bricks around them, and their family members would even lock them in a room and they would feed them for the rest of their life in a little space. And I'm not going to go into too deep, but the point is, there's nothing wrong with them, and they're not crazy. I know I was with my buddy John trekking in northern Nepal or whatever, and we're up in the mountains and the snows and the absolute poverty of the circumstances, little hovels that the Tibetans lived in. And I remember one time the man of the house called us, just waved us in, and we came in and sat down, and they had this hot tea. It was a butter, it's turned bad, and that's all they drank during the winter. They'd heat it up and drink it, and it was very horrible. And they sat down, and it was all they had in the world, and you drink it. And I remember John he was looking at me, he wasn't drinking his, but he spoke Hindi very well, which is from India, and then Tibet. He had that down pretty basic. He was up and back from Tibet. And so I was trying to drink his mine as fast as possible, and then they thought I liked it, so I had another cup. So she gave me another cup, and then I looked at John. But it was like this delicate. John is a lumen being, my buddy John. And if you look around at the poverty of the circumstance and the clothes, the mother, the grandmother sitting there, and you don't get it, and then all of a sudden, just you finish, and then he's leaving you. Okay, time to go. You had the tea. He would do it to anyone or anything, and you didn't realize it. They were illumined. They were part of that Tibetan culture. You know, not that everyone there was, but a great number were, and these were. And John and I looked at each other and realized they're not thinking. They seem to be in poverty. Like, oh, this is horrible. We should leave them 10 rubies or something. They call it ruples, whatever they call it, and rupees. And no, there was nothing wrong there. They were okay. So they got some kind of potato from the ground and lived off whatever through the winters. You never know how they did, and they'd have sores and things, but they weren't. It was just, they were illumined. So there was nothing wrong. There was nothing to do or undo about life. And I met many, many people, Tibetans like that. And the point being, there is a condition called spiritual illumination, called nirvana, called God consciousness. Nirvikalpi samadhi in Sanskrit, which means God consciousness. The beatific vision that Aldous Huxley talked about. And so on. He was a great spirit, and he tried to relate it to the whole world. And when he was at Harvard, the different professors would ask him a question, then he'd kind of close his eyes for 5-10 seconds, and he'd go, oh, and we'd open up. He would speak with a clarity and a use of the language that was just supernormal, just pure genius. He just went into his soul and tried to relate that ability to see to this world. And the Tibetans just knew the right thing to do was to have these people walking by and heat them up and say hello and get them on the road again. And they weren't worried that was the last tea they're going to have. I hope this makes sense, because all the spiritual people I've ever met gave everything, always, and it did not matter. None of the normal concerns we have about daily life matter. We're fixed in our conditioned consciousness in this country, in this world, and it's unnecessary. There is a God, this thing called faith. Spiritual faith is, it's not believing something's going to happen in the future. You're aware of God now. You're always aware of God. God always is. There are no borders between you and God. It's not about your body, about my bad back, or it's just sit back in my easy chair all day. If I can sit there 2 days, sometimes I will. And just float, and just things come to you and move. You have visions all day, every day. And then you can have an hour or two of kind of travail, of working with issues or things, and you'll forget, because the dark side's trying to make you, ground you here. And the mission brings you back to heavenly spaces. So please, with all your heart and soul, remember how decent and wonderful and pure you are to God. And don't react to people's thoughts that are generated through the ether day and night in this world. If you step through and you have this sense of mission, my buddy here is a champion and beyond belief of what he does, and Greg's a master martial arts teacher. All my friends here are just, you push through for your family, push through for God, push through for you. Be as God is. Because to God, you are God. And I know these thoughts sound too way out there. It's not, it's just, Godness is an infinite purity. It's the air, breathing air. It's just sweet and kind and true, and more than anything, it's you. Don't let them take your dignity anymore. Don't let them have you question yourself. If you spend time being quiet, everything will be revealed. Not that it's anything hidden, it's just this world is trying to get your attention. And if you don't react to it and you get very quiet, when I say quiet, there's a very simple, sweet joy to it. And that quiet, there's a sense to it that is it cuts through anything and everything, but it's lighter than air. It's every bit as light as God is. There is a God consciousness. There is an enlightenment, an illumination. There's a real and true you. And if we become quiet enough, you will be revealed to yourself as being this person we portrayed all morning, of an illuminated sense of life. That is life. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Skolta. Thank you for listening.